Hello, and welcome back to my little journey through games made in the Sword of Moonlight engine. It's been a minute, hasn't it? And surprisingly to me, it turns out people rather liked my previous video. I didn't expect it to get such a positive reception, but it's been really cool that it has. In the meantime, a developer reached out to me and I reviewed their game individually. I've become acquainted with some cool people, and there's been some more discoveries of previously lost games. A member of the SOM community even made a launcher for them all, which helps clear up some of the engine's issues. And on that note, I guess it's about time I dive back in. It's time to play more games and see what there is to appreciate. But before I go into some new games, I've got some unfinished business, don't I? While I'm overall happy with the previous video, there were parts of it that could have been better. For one reason or another, there were games that I wasn't able to finish or fully experience. While they may not be perfect, I'd regret leaving them on such an unsatisfying note. So before we get into new material, I think it's time we take a quick trip back to where we left off last time. At the end of the previous video, I left Grand Crochet or Grand Cross unfinished. This was mainly because the game had issues with untextured assets, leaving me very confused at points when it came to navigation. I was worried about missing obvious paths forward because I literally couldn't see them. Also, it was just a bit annoying in its design. Initially, I intended to start this video off by trying to brute force my way to its ending, but then something unexpected happened. So, the untextured assets thing was actually caused by some kind of compiling error. Something to do with original assets, I think? I'd explain it better, but my understanding of the engine is rather limited. More to the point, against the odds of having the game fixed, the missing assets were apparently found after I made the last video, and this 2005 Japanese game no one but me cares about was patched. Look, there aren't mysterious white objects anymore. I can actually see what I'm supposed to be seeing. And so, I started a new game, and with renewed vigor, I decided I was gonna be Grand Cross. Alright then, it's been a while but things are going like I remember. I start out in a foggy area, I'm fighting bugs with a terrible dagger with poor reach, and oh yeah, this game stutters every time the music loops. I forgot how annoying that was. Well, at least I can finally see what these trees are supposed to look like. I may not have perfect memory of the game, but I still recall a good bit. I go through the human area easily enough, grind on these weirdly strong undead enemies that can one-shot you cause Grand Cross's damage balance is terrible, make my way through the poison area down to the incredibly poorly placed healing fountain, which should really not be in the middle of an enemy-infested zone, and then I do a little grinding. I know what this game has coming up. If I can make things easier by killing all the constantly respawning enemies right next to the healing fountain, I will. Man, this game's respawn rate is just ridiculous. After the grind, I kill the boss of the area and find the first of 4 gems. Now that I'm leveled up, it's time for the real test of this patch. I go to the flying enemy area that stopped my progress before, I make my way around finding the 4 keys and... wait, that's what this Iron Maiden was supposed to look like? I mean, I guess I'll give the dev credit for making an original model, it just looks a bit silly is all. Anyways, I find the 4 keys, I go to the floating bridge area from the unpatched version of the game, and... the bridge is still floating, and there doesn't seem to be any newly visible things that may have been previously hidden for being a white object on a white background. Well, dang it. Okay then, let's try and finish the game without whatever's over there. I'm only guessing the gems are mandatory, but you never know, maybe they aren't. And if we can't finish the game without them, I might have an idea. I know there was at least one area that was basically unnavigatable due to missing textures. I make my way through the fiery area with these insta-kill dragons, grab this cross, go to this barrier, and well, look at that. I can now see this area. Before it was a white void, but now I can see it's a floating maze. A really jank maze that doesn't like when I change elevation, and I fall through the floor like 5 times, but I can navigate it now. Eventually I find some warp point, which leads to another warp point, and then to an invisible thing? If it wasn't for its aura or whatever, I wouldn't even know it's there. I think it's the area boss? Well, I guess I'll kill it. So I just attack the area over and over, and I beat it. Why is there text on the screen? Wait, credits? I beat the game? Yeah, apparently I just beat the final boss. I don't even think it attacked me. I guess gathering the gems to restore the Moonlight Sword was optional, and taking another look at Grand Cross's archive site, it looks like the story is how you get the best ending, but is otherwise not needed to just beat the game. This was entirely unexpected. I was worried that my progress would remain blocked, but I did it. I beat Grand Crochet. I know there's at least 1 or 2 more areas or bosses I've never seen, but I'm alright with this. ground crushing is janky and honestly kind of bad. I have no idea why the dev's previous game Angel Tower felt so much better, but in the end, now that it's patched, I can at least confirm it's beatable. I mean, I guess it was beatable pre-patched if you like navigating invisible mazes without falling to your death, but you know what I mean. I can't say I recommend playing this for yourself, but at least if you wanted to, it's in a better state than it was a few months ago. And with one game now beaten, there's another old friend I need to return to, isn't there? Tower of Babel is the earliest known finished Sword of Moonlight game. I was initially excited to be able to beat it compared to the unfinished games, only to get stuck on a puzzle. It was a Switch puzzle that I tested every possible combination for, assuming each button was only pressed once. Well, after I posted my video, I joined the Sword of Moonlight Discord, and someone actually posted the puzzle solution. So, let's take another shot at Tower of Babel. Start the game, enter the tower, grab the sword from the chest to actually be able to fight things well. Why do these games start you off with a terrible dagger anyways? A bunch of these Som games do that, and I honestly don't get it. Just start me off with the sword, with actual range. Anyways, I make my way through the first area, make my way through the second area, all the way to floor 3. Get to the puzzle, do the combination, and it worked. I can finally progress. And you know what the worst part is? That was like the only puzzle in the game. Seriously, I didn't encounter a single puzzle after that, just basic keys and switches. I got stuck on the one puzzle the game had. Isn't that funny? But replaying Tower of Babel, and after going through the later areas, I started to notice Tower of Babel is actually kinda solid. Maybe I'm just a bit too used to other more unfriendly games, but Tower of Babel feels like it's actually trying to be fun for the player. You find new equipment at a good rate, you regularly gain spells on level up, spells also don't cost a lot of mana so you can use them without worry, enemies aren't super difficult as long as you kill some every now and then to level up, and I think the level design actually gets better as it goes. Levels are still very basic and enemy layout can feel a little haphazard, but it has its moments. Between every main floor there's these in-between quiet transition zones which act as a nice change of pace, and every now and then Tower of Babel feels properly atmospheric. I mean, it's not great, but the developer did a solid job with what they had. In the end, I found myself rolling credits and actually liking the game, despite its overall averageness. There's still some kind of texture or draw distance problem in some rooms, and for some reason dialogue boxes make the screen a slightly different color, but overall, Tower of Babel really isn't half bad. It may not have incredible or interesting design, but it's honestly enjoyable despite some of its faults. I gotta say, it feels pretty good to go back and beat those two games. It fixes some unsatisfying elements in the last video, but there was one more game from before I didn't really feel like I got to play. Remember NeverQuest? It was the one that had a weird amount of effort put into it, only for its base systems, like attacking, not to work. It had dialogue, hints of potential side quests, still one of the best town areas I've seen in the engine, and I couldn't really explore any of it cause I couldn't attack. There were weapons I could buy at the shop, but they cost thousands of gold. There's technically infinite spawning herbs you can farm outside of town to sell, but only for 1 gold each. I'm determined, but that grinds a bit too much. Well, I had a plan. I grabbed a little tool called Cheat Engine to help fix the problem. I've never really used this before, but it can help me manipulate values in the game's memory, like giving myself 10,000 gold to buy a weapon. I did just that, equipped it, and now I can attack enemies in NeverQuest. I feel unstoppable. There's no way this won't fix all the problems. I even killed the first enemy I see in one hit and, it didn't give me any experience. Well, how about this one? No. None of the enemies seem to give experience points. And to make matters worse, I can still die very fast. For some reason the 10 or so herbs I have in my inventory aren't selectable or just aren't a healing item at all. So I still die quite quickly because enemies spawn right behind me and I can't heal any damage. So I reload the game, give myself a little bit more money, buy what armor I can for the shop, and that only helps a little bit. I can survive more hits, sure, but there's simply a limit. I can't heal, I can't get stronger, I can't seem to find a better armor vendor. I even tried to use Cheat Engine to freeze my health value to make myself functionally immortal, but I wasn't able to figure it out. Again, I never used this thing. I'd later learn from people more adept at going through the game files and looking at stuff that there apparently are enemies that give experience, but apparently it's only like 4 specific ones for some reason. Also, I guess it's just a tiny amount. Once again, this game leaves me with more questions than answers. But honestly, I think that's enough for now. NeverQuest is just this bizarre little unfinished thing, isn't it? It's got more dialogue and NPCs than finished games, but it's not really playable. I mean, no duh, it's not finished, but when basic mechanics aren't there while more complex levels are, I just don't know what to make of it. Perhaps it's a very elaborate joke? Maybe later I'll return to it once again with better knowledge of cheat engine or something to be able to show it off, but until then, let's finally move on to new games. We start the actual content of this video with two rather particular entries, two unfinished games found between the making of the first video and this one. Where I plan to be able to start this video with the first finished Sword of Moonlight game made in English, we first need to finish up our work with some Japanese releases. As a reminder, I basically need to guess what I've seen all they have to offer, and make some assumptions when it comes to creator intent. It might turn out I missed parts of these unfinished games, but I missed parts in the finished ones too, so I guess it's only fair. And so, we have Immortality of Time by developer False Rain. This game is a bit interesting, but still not exactly great. Doing my best with the translator and the in-game text, the plot seems to involve a tower either appearing or collapsing and magic disappearing from the land. Your father, the king, and all your brothers were exiled, so it's up to you to restore magic to the land, or something like that. It also looks like this is supposed to take place in the world of Kingsfield, because the land of Verdite gets mentioned. You play as daughter to the king, Lysella, or Lysera. I think this might be the first female playable character we've come across. Well, the ideas don't end there, because to go along with that, you start with virtually no strength. Immortality of Time is a magic-focused game, where your melee is pitiful, but casting spells is cheap and fast. Initially, I didn't like it taking 2 minutes for my stamina to charge up just to do no damage with my dagger, but the spell-focused combat isn't that bad, if a little basic. You start the game in your house, where you can rest in your bed for a full heal, which is pretty nice, but for some reason you can't save there. You need to find the floating cross in the middle of nowhere to save. Why didn't they just put that in the house? I've seen a few games that like to put save points weirdly away from everything else, and I never understand why. In terms of the gameplay, you actually start with almost a full set of equipment, which is pretty nice, and you wander around and kill stuff. There's really not a lot to do between the two maps. You fire spells at enemies, find the shopkeeper or the one other NPC to talk to, and I think that's it. There doesn't seem to be anything else to do in this game. I did find a secret though. As is Kingsfield tradition, there's a hidden area with a skeleton guarding a shield. I kill the skeleton with my magic, loot the chest, and I can't even equip it. It's too heavy to use alongside my other gear, because I have no strength. That's a really mean joke there, Immortality of Time, but I guess I'll give you props for your magic-focused gameplay, maybe making you the first Eternal Ring-like. On the topic of games relating to but are not Kingsfield, our next unfinished game, Deep Under X by developer Aho, is a remake of Shadow Tower. If the developer or naming scheme sound familiar, you may remember Aho from their game Neo Under. Neo Under was a sort of remake of Kingsfield 2, and Aho's second project after their first, Deep Under. Well, Deep Under is apparently still lost, until the community finds it the day I released this video, thus invalidating it. Deep Under X was a remake of it, presumably an attempt to make an improved version after they had more experience with the engine. And, well, Deep Under X is Shadow Tower. It may not be exact, but the level layouts, item locations, enemies, they're all like 90% similar. Of course, some compromises had to be made, because Shadow Tower is famous for its enemy variety, where the Sword of Moonlight engine is not. But Aho did a solid job recreating the first few levels of Human World. I was able to fight the equivalent of the Guardian Skeleton, and then they left a message saying this was the end. How nice of them. Keeps me from having to wonder. There's not much else to really comment on other than, oh, they didn't implement this or that mechanic for Shadow Tower, but obviously it's not like this project was done. Maybe if it was, there would be things like a durability system. Well, at least the audio is on point. Just like Shadow Tower, there's no music. It creates more of a tense ambiance. Maybe it's cheating to be giving it credit when all the design work was done for them, but Deep Under X is easily the best unfinished game I've played by this point. That's not exactly a high bar, but credit where it's due. I'm a little bummed out I'll never get to play the potential finished version. Oh well, maybe someone else will attempt a Shadow Tower remake. But enough of all that, it's time for what this video was originally going to start with. And it's a big one. Diadem of Mount Stratus. Wait, what do you mean I forgot Battle for the Inn? It came out before Diadem? I never even downloaded it like all the others? I made a list of each game in order and had this whole thing planned out and whatever. Immortality of Time and Deep Under X already threw this thing off, as well as revisiting the old games. And no, this isn't a random bit. I legit somehow didn't include Battle for the Inn in the rough draft for this video, and somehow didn't download it like all the other Song games. Always double check your work, folks. Okay then, Battle for the Inn is another unfinished game, but this time it was made in the English version of the engine after JDO translated it. So I guess it's the first of its kind we're looking at in a sense. There's not a lot to it, but it looks like it was originally made in Game Maker in 2004, before being remade in the Som engine in 2008. It was also, apparently, based on Verdite Inn, a Kingsfield Yahoo group. The Sword of Moonlight community actually archived the webpage, so we can still see what they were all chatting about. Well, I guess I'll open up the Game Maker version first, since I have it. It actually took a bit to get this running because it's an old Game Maker exe, but once I did, there it is. Monsters have invaded the inn, and we need to save it. And man, when I'm calling you stiff among Som games, you must be. But okay, let's be fair. The game is limited, but we can move around, strafe, attack and cast magic, and walk over herbs to heal while killing enemies. They actually seem to drop gold or something as well, but I have no idea what it's for. You fight floating skeleton torsos, slimes, mushrooms, and the best greatsword wielding skeleton I've ever seen. This animation brings me joy. But really, all you do is explore, find teleporters to the next area, and then eventually I guess I beat it. There's not a lot to say, but at the very least, I'm sure this will be important context for its remake, so let's check that out. The title screen is actually quite nice, though it would have been better if the title was there. We play as some guy making portagranate tiki, solidifying this as taking place in the Kingsfield world. There's a store that doesn't sell anything, some houses without much in them, and... wait a minute, where's the inn? I may just not be interpreting these buildings correctly, but I don't think any of these are an inn. Isn't this Battle for the Inn? Well, spoiler alert, I don't think Battle for the Inn even has an inn in it. What it does have is some money and equipment to find, some monsters to kill, a guy we need to pay to teach us lockpicking, and eventually you just end up in a cave where an old man says this is the end of the demo. I explored a little bit past this point, but there wasn't anything interesting I found. I'm not really sure how the old Game Maker version got turned into this. I mean, to say something nice, the game isn't poorly balanced in terms of combat, and it does have one or two nice looking rooms. It's just, where's the inn in Battle for the Inn? These Som games always find some new way to confuse me. But for real this time, enough of all that. It's time for what this video was initially intended to start with when I planned out the endpoint for the last one. And it's an important entry. Diadem of Mountstrout is, apparently, the first game completed in the Sword of Moonlight engine in English after JDO translated the engine. Developed by Thomas Eversole, this is a bit of a landmark in terms of Sword of Moonlight games, and I'm excited to be able to play a full game again and be able to read all the text. Without the language barrier, I'm super optimistic about Diadem of Mountstrout actually just being a lot of fun. Starting with the story that I can now accurately convey, in the ancient land of Mountstrout, the crown of Lord Schnell, the diadem, has grown brittle. While the diadem is used to ward off evil, the cracks that are starting to form allow darkness to spread. So, the king sends you, Zare Grimholder, to find a cure in the distant land. The game opens with us spying in a field. There's a Dagorin helmet, we can find a little church, and... is it just me or is this game darker than usual? I thought it was just me at first, but other people said the same thing. I guess this game really is just set to be darker? Oh well, I walk around, kill some termites, find some herbs and whatnot, and I'm led to a cave. There's some skeletons in there, and it's a little hard to maneuver, but I'm sure I can... Wait. They one-shot me? Well, okay then, I'll just grind more termites for some levels and... Nope, still one-shot. Well, how about I go the other way and... Whoa, there's some giant plants here. I interact with the fountain, which tells me to bring some guy's head, and then the plants kill me. I try leveling up more and unlock a defensive spell. That's actually not too common in these games, and it looks like you learn support magic mainly by leveling up, and offensive spells mainly by finding them. That's some cool design. Well, the user manual that comes with the game file says to use the defensive spells, so I do, and... Are you kidding? This spell puts up a big ugly mess on my screen, making it harder to see, doesn't last that long, and doesn't seem to give me that much more defense anyways? Is this a bit? Maybe I'm meant to just run past the skeletons? No, that doesn't work either, because the next area is also just filled with enemies that one-shot me. But I do find an NPC who offers me some sound advice. Grind. Keep killing things and get stronger. So, here's the thing about Diadem of Mountstrout. It's hard. Kingsfield games already aren't the easiest things in general, but this is on another level. My first hour or two of playing was grinding in the starting areas. I needed to increase my health, but then there's another problem. In the beginning, there's no way, as far as I could tell, to heal yourself consistently. Enemies drop antidotes, but not healing herbs as far as I can tell. There's also no healing fountain. I was able to kill termites and plants over and over without taking too much damage, but I was legit worried about running out of resources. Eventually though, after a good bit of grinding, I progress. I kill harder enemies, find better gear, and the second zone has a merchant to buy stuff from. At this point, I had a ton of money, and if I saved up a little more, I could have gotten a really powerful sword, but I opt for better armor. You'll learn that in Diadem, armor is key. It may just be 2 or 3 defense points, but you'll feel them. They matter a lot. After these caves, I actually find myself running past a lot of enemies with the hopes of just finding something to help, and I found it. I found the healing fountain. This changes everything, and I start to really learn Diadem Steel. I've come up with a little descriptor for this game, and that is Kaizo Kingsfield. Of course named after the genre of difficult Mario ROM hacks, cause that's what this game feels like. It starts with a difficult grind, and honestly that never stops. There's constant grinding, even if I'm not conveying that well. You even need to grind to a certain level just to beat the game. I asked Eversoul about the game's difficulty, and apparently, its difficulty wasn't actually intentional. It looks like they were just the kind of guy who grinded and intended for the player to do the same thing. But that's not the only thing that makes this game hard. The game also has traps that can be pretty mean, like enemy ambushes. It also loves throwing status effects at you, like enemies that passively inflict dark, in a game that's already dark. It even places some save points in rooms filled with monsters, like some kind of mocking gesture. And yet, the weird thing is, I think this game is well made. It has sections that feel like the developer is trying to make the game frustrating, but it never feels like the levels are poorly made or largely unfair. There's a degree of good design and intent in the level layouts. You find loot and gear regularly, and every healing item or pile of gold feels useful. There's powerful gear with life-draining effects that initially feel like another cruel jab at the player, but then a part of me wonders, maybe if I put this on temporarily, even if it's draining my health, I could deal with that one section. NPCs for their part frequently give hints to the player about certain puzzle solutions. I also like how the game files have a manual to help explain things to the player and provide tips. The developer even managed to put in platforming in a Psalm game. It's not the greatest platforming, but you can feel effort in this game's design. But funny enough, the game wasn't even the initial focus. Diadem of Monstro didn't actually start as a game, but as a soundtrack. According to Eversoul, so Devs were making a Kingsfield fan game called KF, but it was cancelled or something, and he wanted to do something with the music he made for it. He then talked with JDO, who was translating the Sword of Moonlight engine at the time, and decided to make his own game. I don't always have much to say about music in video games, it's just not my area of expertise. Also, for some of these, I have no idea if the developer actually made the music or just pulled it from somewhere else. Giving the soundtrack for Diadem a listen though, it really gives me a Kingsfield feel a lot at the time. From my amateur perspective, there's some good tracks here, so good job Eversoul. But back to the game itself, in summary, I hate this game, but also love it. It's far too grindy and can be needlessly frustrating, but I also just can't be mad at it. Like, Grand Cross was also grindy and frustrating, but that was accompanied by annoying level designs, enemies constantly respawning, nothing to meaningfully mitigate magic damage. Diadem of Monstro is a good game bogged down by its grind. The only other complaints I have are the game being a bit too dark, its defensive spell effects clogging up the screen. Though, in all fairness, they did come in real handy for certain parts. And even then, part of the game's challenging and frustrating nature made it endearing to me. It made it all the more satisfying when I did complete a section and made progress. I don't exactly recommend this game, and I don't really want to play it again, but I do think it was overall well made, and a standout for the engine so far. But keeping in line with the last video, we aren't done with Tom Eversoul just yet. It turns out our next game and last entry for this video was also developed by him. But for an interesting change of pace, it's basically the exact opposite of Diadem. Introducing Trismegistus, a game almost entirely without combat and a focus on puzzles. Time for something just a little bit different. Once again, starting with the story, we boot up the game and learn that white text on a white background might not have been the best idea, but we learned that in the land of Vongtor, Lord Fenris has been a good king for 20 years. But one day he began acting strangely and disappeared. They tracked him down to the abandoned island of Kimia, but still couldn't find Lord Fenris. Since Kimia used to be tied to alchemists, they decided to send a bunch of them in hopes of them discovering the island's secrets. You play as budding female alchemist with the knack for puzzles. I'm gonna go with Claude and Dag? The key is supposedly in the Grimoire Grand Hall, which requires 3 keys to enter, known as the Trismegistus. Only one has ever been found though, so it's up to you to find the remaining 2, enter the depths of Kimia, and find Lord Fenris. And so, the game opens with us on the island. Things are a little different this time around, so let's talk about the basics. Thankfully this game, just like Diadem, came with a user manual on the files. I was happy to have it for Diadem and really appreciate it, but oh boy was it a great inclusion here. Trismegistus has very different gameplay than we've seen so far. You have no health, levels of experience, equipment, at least in the usual sense, and completely different stats. First is the Trismegistus stat, marking how many of the 3 Trismegistus keys you have. Important for sure, but not really something you'll be thinking about a lot. Following that is solves, which is how many of the 118 puzzles you've solved. I'm not entirely sure what counts in some instances, as I've seen things like finding clues raise the value, but you get the idea. Then we have the more important stats. Intellect is a little unclear to me how much it actually matters, but consuming certain items and solving certain puzzles increases its value and unlocks dialogue and interactions with NPCs. More important is magic. Magic is what allows you to use certain items and spells. Just finding the item to solve the puzzle may not be enough if you don't have enough magic to use it. You increase your magic through finding and consuming verdite ore, or again by sometimes solving certain puzzles. Lastly is Spirits Collected, which is a count of how many of these ghosts you've gathered with a late game item, but for this video it's not that important to mention. So, with these as your new stats, you start your adventure on the island. You'll likely wander around, spy a few treasure chests and puzzles of sorts, and get the mirror. Trismegistus starts out by giving you an item that tells you what all the other items do. Good design. Some other Sword of Moonlight games could learn a thing from that. And actually, wait a minute, I can save, like, from the menu. Usually the option is listed, but not accessible, requiring you to use save points. Trismegistus actually allows you to just save wherever you want. How convenient. But watch out, as I do think it's possible to get soft locked in the rare case. Other useful things include these gems, which you can use at these altars to get a puzzle hint. Sometimes these are quite useful, other times not as much. Oh, and you can't look at them again, even if you interact with the altar. That honestly sucks and feels like an obvious flaw. On that note, how are the puzzles in Trismegistus? If this is a puzzle-focused game, its quality would largely depend on them. Well, I'll say right off the bat, I don't play games like this often. These puzzle-focused adventure games aren't really my thing, and I was worried going in that Trismegistus would be filled with moon logic. But I'm happy to say, I had almost no problems at all with Trismegistus. If anything, I think its puzzles are well thought out, generally intuitive, and decently engaging without being too easy or hard. The game doesn't throw too many items at you, and it's usually easy to find out what they do. It also gives you this thing called the Eye of Horus early on, letting you hop between the normal world and this sort of dark world to solve puzzles. I think it's neat. It could lead to some fun puzzle solving between the 2 versions of an area. That said, I did have to look up the solution to one of them. Just one though. I really wanted to beat the game without any help, but I just didn't fully understand what this thing in the starting area was doing. But aside from that, I had a genuinely good time with Trismegistus, or at least until the end. So at this point, I would rate Trismegistus quite highly on the Sword of Moonlight scale. Maybe even top spot for what I played so far. But there's a small problem. In order to actually beat the game, you need to raise that magic stat all the way to 50. And in order to do that, you basically need to solve every puzzle and find every hidden piece of verdite ore. And I couldn't. I'm sitting here at 49 magic with almost every puzzle solved, at the endgame area able to challenge the final boss, and I have no idea where I'm missing that last point of magic. If I may give some criticism, I understand that being a puzzle game should require solving every puzzle. It just feels like maybe there should have been some leeway, a few extra pieces of verdite ore lying around. I figure I must have solved every puzzle in order to get to the end, and I'm missing a piece of ore lying around somewhere, but I've looked and I just can't find the thing. I'm genuinely stuck, and it's leaving me on a sour note for an otherwise quite well done game. I know people have beaten it, so I'm not saying the game is unbeatable or anything. I just have no idea where that missing magic point is. I guess while I'm complaining, I'll also point out the music as being a bit awkward. Trismegistus goes for something more subtle and atmospheric, but aside from the sound balancing being a bit high at points, the sound cues will cut into each other when a lot of different tracks or effects play. They're all fine on their own, but it can be a bit jarring in practice. The game's genuinely good with its audio cues and signaling though. I really wish I could give Trismegistus glowing praise, but I guess no game's perfect. Still, I never expected such a change in the Kingsfield formula to turn out so well in this engine. It's honestly great, and I can see why it's a favorite in the community. Tom Eversole may not have made perfect games, but in my opinion, I think he did a great job between the two. Diadem gave us maybe a bit too much of a challenge, and Trismegistus maybe needed some small touches, but I came out of both of them quite satisfied with the experience, for better or for worse. At this point, the Sword of Moonlight engine is moving away from being a curiosity to me into something that can provide a good game. There really is some potential in this engine. I guess the only thing left to talk about is to bring up Trismegistus X. To make a long and uninformed story short, there was a guy who tried to make a new and improved Sword of Moonlight engine, Sword of Moonlight X. I believe it's a wrapper around the existing one, and it's apparently a nightmare that doesn't work well according to other people's testimony. For whatever reason, some guys remade Trismegistus using that engine, and Trismegistus X exists. I asked and was told it's just the same game and there was no reason to play it. Then I at least tried to get footage and it wouldn't start, cause Som X doesn't work well, apparently. This has been the obligatory mention of Trismegistus X, so someone doesn't ask me why I didn't mention it. But with that said, we've reached the end of this video. We've rectified parts of the last one, and finally made our way into games developed in the English engine. It's some real good progress, and I'd imagine some of my journey was entertaining. That brings this video to a close, but don't worry, I think you'll be getting the next one very soon. If you want to make sure you don't miss it, keep an eye on the channel, and join me next time on our journey through Sword of Moonlight games.